start with what the research tells us and why it matters. So, Clay, I'm going to start with you here. Your team spoke with over 250 associations. First of all, that's a lot. So, what stood out to you right away from these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I think just going off the title of this webinar, the big theme that we saw that really stood out right away was just that fragmentation around the tech stack. And you can see a couple of these top pain points around just the sheer number of systems that they're using, and just the way that they integrate together is just a huge issue. We think about an AMS, association management software, as being this kind of central hub for associations, but we didn't really see, first of all, we didn't see a big dominant player in that space, nobody having more than 10% market share. But in addition to that, when we think about all the other tools that make up the tech stack, and that's CRM, learning management, events, volunteer management, community engagement, these associations are really using specialized tools for basically all of these things. For community management, for example, we saw 44% using Facebook groups. So again, this really feeds into this big challenge of fragmentation of data, not being able to get a clear view of how everybody's engaging, and then ultimately being able to support your members appropriately.
It's really interesting, Clay, you kind of share that because that kind of matches what we see too, especially when associations don't have that real time engagement data. And the reason why is because an outreach tends to fall flat. It just may be generic messaging, generic communication, not timely, and unfortunately, it doesn't do you any favors, especially in the day and age we live nowadays, where people expect timely, personalized communications and knowing everything about them. Which kind of leads us straight into the next slide here with really what's holding associations back. And I think you kind of alluded to some of it. And I think from my perspective, one of the key points and one of the things that really caught my eye was 47% cited member satisfaction as their biggest challenge. Why do you think this is such a pervasive challenge all these associations are experiencing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's sort of two sides to this. So membership dues, we saw membership dues as being the top revenue driver for associations with 43%. So obviously, understanding your members, keeping them engaged is critical, right? That's critical to the business and the growth of the business. Um, in terms of the actual engagement with them, I think we saw sort of two parts of the issue around that. And so one is, again, data, just the struggle of getting data, like you were saying. Like, we're used to a world now where we can do real-time engagement, we can do personalization, and there's just all kinds of challenges with that when you've got these disparate systems that don't communicate well. And then the other part, we saw that, events are a huge part of association engagement. And what a lot of associations struggle with is what's happening in between those events, and making sure that members feel like they're getting enough value from their dues to keep their membership going. We heard from one leader who runs an association for Jewish studies, and he was talking about the fact that they've got this one big annual event that they do, like a conference every year. You have to be a member to attend, and they would see this spike of membership happening right before the big event, and then people churning and leaving afterwards. So again, there's just this challenge of sharing information, making sure people know that there's other content available, whether that's training information or other things that associations provide. Um, but that is a big problem of just making sure members feel like they're getting enough out of their membership.
And I would say the top three that we see here right now are kind of all interrelated.
Mhm.
Member satisfaction directly impacts member retention and member growth. And then because you don't have the member retention, member growth, now you got to go do new member acquisition,
Yeah.
and it's kind of all feeding on each other and causing these challenges. And of course, we're going to get into what are some of the other challenges holding associations back. But from really, Clay, what you're saying here, I mean, really the other issues are probably the leading cause of the primary ones that we see on top. Because when associations don't have real-time engagement data, their outreach will fall flat. And that leads directly into the retention issue, which is then saying associations then have to go out and try and find more members to make up the difference. And it's this cycle they're in
Exactly.
constantly.